Now let me go on. Towards the end of 2015, many became aware of another ranching family in Oregon, the Hammonds, where the father, Dwight, 74, and the son, Stephen, 43, had been put in prison for resisting federal agencies of the executive branch in taking their lands. The abuse to this family over 2 decades is terrible. Federal agencies of the executive branch teamed together and have taken their water rights, destroyed much of their ranch, restricted use of private property and access to it. Through the courts, they have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines, forced them to sign that they would only sell their ranch to the BLM, and put them in prison the second time for doing maintenance on their ranch without a permit from the Bureau of Land Management. All of this was done inside the state of Oregon on private property or land that federal agencies do not have constituted authority to administrate. These same tactics are being used to take established property rights all over the United States. The EPA, an agency of the executive branch, is using the same playbook in the eastern states. Before federal agencies diminished ranching and destroyed logging in Harney County, where the Hammonds lived, the county had the highest family incomes in the state of Oregon. Now families in Harney County struggle with the lowest incomes in the state. Over the last 30 years, Harney County has consistently declined in incomes, population, and jobs because of the federal government's overtake of the land and resources. The best hope of employment anyone has now in Harney County is working for a federal agency of the executive branch, the BLM, Forest Service, or Fish and Wildlife. Government employment tallies at 58% of Harney County income. This percent does not include those on government assistance. Together, approximately 70% of Harney County residents depend on the government for their living. The remaining minority, the producers, are choking from forceful regulations and live in fear of retaliation if they speak out. Those that do speak out against the federal agencies, like the Hammonds, are targeted, demonized, their lands are taken, they are prosecuted and thrown in prison. What has happened to us, the Hammonds, and the people of Harney County is a type and a shadow of what is happening to our entire country. We must stop federal agencies of the executive branch from taking over and controlling the producing class. Federal agents have shown they are willing to destroy entire state and county economies and put the American people in prison to protect, increase, and justify their gain and control. It is rapidly coming down to federal agencies gaining control or the American working class. And these federal agencies of the executive branch have been building up heavy military forces to make sure their projects of ambition are not limited. Look at what they put us in jail for: conspiracy to impede a federal officer's duties. Or in other words, resisting them from doing what they want to do. Federal agencies have conspired for years in impeding the jobs and taking the incomes of the American working class, diminishing states, counties, and destroying more incomes and livelihoods than any other people in the history of this country. When someone finally stands up and says no more, when that person says to federal agencies, your duties are unlawfully destroying our livelihoods and destroying our states, our counties, our future, and our children's future, when this message becomes loud enough that people take notice, federal mercenaries hired by agencies of the executive branch move in, shoot and arrest the messengers, and drive fear into anyone that might stand up. Federal agencies of the executive branch are willing to kill and destroy families to protect their ambitions to get gain. Just ask the Finicum family or the 26 Bundy children with their fathers locked up, if I speak the truth. No moral principle, tradition, heritage, livelihood, or way of life, or life itself appears to be more important than their ambitions to get gain. Produce nothing, take everything. Modern-day robbers. In my 40 years, I have seen a stomach full of my hard-working neighbors lose their homes, incomes, heritage, and freedoms at the hands of these wool-covered predators. Often I ask myself, what is to be done? What are we to do? How can we allow this to continue? Do people care about what is happening to our country? Seeing directly what federal agencies did to the Hammonds and to the citizens of Harney County, experiencing firsthand at the Bundy Ranch how federal agencies are willing to kill everyday American men and women to keep themselves in power. If the Lord did not protect so many people to come and show up at the Bundy Ranch, I am certain that federal agents would have taken our lives. Something had to be done. How could we pass these gross and growing deteriorations of rights and liberties over to our children? What would be left by the time they are raising their children? Feeling a providential urge, a love for my neighbors, and a great concern for my country, I used the public connections made during the Bundy Ranch to inform everyone I could about the abuses to the Hammond family and how adverse federal agencies have taken over and destroyed the economy in Harney County. Many, including myself, began to petition the county and state representatives to do their duty and protect the liberties and pursuit of happiness of the people in the county. All of this fell on deaf ears. The elected representatives did not even respond to one of our emails. We know they received thousands. We learned later that the FBI, an agency of the executive branch, contacted the sheriff, state and county representatives, and directed them not to respond to the people's petitions. This lack of response created an extreme environment of frustration with the people. No matter what the people did, even after filing an official notice of redress of grievance, the representatives would not respond. It is my belief that if the FBI would have stayed out of it, elected representatives would have responded and taken a lead. This would have ended the mass frustration, and the people would have gotten behind their representatives with major support, satisfying any need for the people to act on their own. The entire protest at the Wildlife Refuge could have been avoided if the FBI would have stayed out of the way of our republic form of government. But then again, the FBI could not justify their jobs or have a reason to play with their war toys if the American system of government was allowed to work properly. This reminds me of a John F. Kennedy quote, "Those who make peaceful revolutions impossible make violent revolutions inevitable." The Hammond case was setting a very dangerous precedent in federal court. The abuse has been too great to turn a blind eye. The elected representatives were ignoring the people. What were we to do? Feeling inspired to do so, on January 2nd, less than an hour before the rally in support of the Hammonds, I proposed to a group of people, including a sheriff deputy, that we need to do more to bring attention to the abuses and to educate the American people of their rights. I shared how I felt and expressed that we should use adverse possession law to reverse the actions of these federal agencies and give the land that has been stolen back to the people of the county. This was legal, beneficial to the people, and would bring a lot of media exposure to these abuses. With a majority in agreement, we took residents of a federally controlled wildlife refuge 30 miles outside of town. To create this refuge, over 100 ranching families lost their ranches, homes, their lands to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, another agency of the executive branch. As U.S. adverse possession law requires, we changed the name of the refuge to the Harney County Resource Center, changed the signs, including the vehicles and equipment, contacted the utility companies, flew the American flag high, opened the post office address, and created a land registry to adjudicate the parcels back to the people of Harney County. Oh, and meanwhile, we attracted international media attention that had no idea what adverse possession was. At times it was quite comical watching the controlled mainstream media who had free access to roam the facilities, talking to us openly through each day, and then reporting how we were somehow dangerous armed militants. We shook our heads over this many times. In just a couple of weeks, we attracted over 1,000 visitors, men, women, and children. Even elementary students came to the center to do homework reports on the events. The local people began supplying all our food, supporting us financially, and took care of us well. They also shared their horror stories of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the BLM, and the Forest Service actions over the past several decades. Out of our many visitors, hundreds attended our seminars on property rights, including state representatives from 5 different western states. These people were taking the message back to their hometowns and organizing community meetings for us to attend. Meanwhile, the FBI, need I remind you, an agency of the executive branch, took over the high school, county buildings, and downtown Burns, and the airport, terrorizing the local people, trying to scare them into believing that their force was necessary to protect them against us. As time went on, the local people started to see through this. The FBI knew they had to act quickly to end our education on what federal agencies of the executive branch have been doing to the American people. Emails from government officials read, "The virus is spreading," indicating that our message was too effective and must be stopped. January 26th, on the way to a community meeting in Grant County, Oregon, the FBI and Oregon State Police ambushed us and opened fire without cause, shooting my brother Ryan and killing our friend and fellow Arizona rancher, Lavoy Finicum. They shot him multiple times in the back with his hands in the air. The FBI tried to cover up their participation by denying that they shot and hiding the bullet casings. If we would not have filmed the attack, they would have got away with it. Never did we hold a gun or show any type of threat to them. We were carrying laptops, projectors, and a PA system, planning on having another effective meeting with the people of Grant County, including the sheriff. We were invited to meetings like this every day that week. Our schedule was filling up. With millions of dollars, thousands of federal agents, control of the main media, federal agencies were still not able to suppress the truth. So they resolved to use force, much like a big bully, who is not intelligent enough to convince people to follow him. So he just beats them up if they don't. Our message is one of freedom and choice. Their message is of coercion and force. With my brother Ryan and I arrested and others, the FBI went on a massive witch hunt, arresting people from all over the United States. Many had nothing to do with Oregon, but were in support in 2014. I suppose they thought this was their chance to completely destroy any opposition to their ambitious agenda. My father, a 70-year-old man, was met with 30 or so FBI operators in the airport. He was on his way to visit my brother and I. My brother Dave, they tactically converged on him while he was unloading lumber for the house he is building. Over 40 agents with assault rifles and full tactical gear in the little town of Delta, Utah, shooting flashbangs at him, one of the most reserved, kindest men I know. My brother Mel was in Arizona when they converged on him. Now with the men of the Bundy family locked away in prison cells, charged with pretend offenses, the Bundy women are left to tend for our children and our livelihoods, including the ranch. Meanwhile, federal agencies of the executive branch are making plans once again to take our homes, the ranch, remove the cattle, sell them for their profit, destroy the water infrastructure, and take all our assets of value. This would force my mother, our wives, and children out of our homes with nothing to our names. Meanwhile, we the providers and protectors are locked away, facing vindictive charges that if convicted could put us in prison for the rest of our lives. We never once hurt anybody, threatened anybody, or used force in any way. We simply stood for our rights and the rights of our neighbors. Adding salt to our wounds, the extreme environmental group that called themselves the Center for Biological Diversity, that has worked hand in hand for several years with the BLM, Forest Service, and other federal agencies, had the audacity to go to my mother at the ranch and offer to buy our century-old family grazing rights for next to nothing. They indicated that they would offer us some money before they took them from us. My mother kindly asked them to leave. They have followed up by phone and continued to harass her. At the beginning of this, I asked you to judge us, to form an informed conclusion in your mind if we were justified to stand for our rights. Time will only allow me to express the 100th part of what has happened to us. However, before making that judgment, consider a couple more points.